Yeah, welcome to another episode. Thank you for tuning in. In this recording, I'm having a chat with Elizabeth Jane Jones. Some of you may know her as Huw and Owens Mum. We talked about all sorts in this episode. Moving to Lincolnshire, religion, loss and hardship, the environment, family, travellers, meaning, and many other things. So it was quite a long conversation. Also, the music in this episode's all by Krzysztof Steflowski. I think I've got his name right there. He's on YouTube and he makes little samples and things for synthesizers and things like that. So I thought the music was quite cool. So if you like it, go and check him out in the description. But yeah, if you're ready, let's go.
Some of his facts ever slightly wrong.
Did he?
Yeah.
What was one of those then?
I don't know. One of them was he referred to somebody called Sheila, but her name was Celia.
Right.
Close.
Okay. Close.
He was a small child then, so it's reasonable to.
That was someone at the the Travellers site.
Oh, it was. Yeah, I used to work with her.
Yeah.
And it's a funny old process, but that. I married into the Travellers when I was just 16.
Really?
And the same year my eldest son was born, not necessarily in that order. And so I lived with them for about 7.5 years.
Yeah.
And when a person is 16, it's quite an impressionable age.
Yeah.
So I was quite overwhelmed and impressed by everything that I learned.
Yeah.
But this is what resulted in later on as being prepared to go and stay on a Travellers site, because I knew Celia and her sister from where I was working.
Right.
I was the supervisor at a school, and they were working there under me. In the cleaning capacity in the evenings.
Yeah.
And so I knew of the family anyway, because their family is one that I had something to do with a little bit when I was that younger.
Yeah.
So we were able to ask if we could go and stay there, if they had somewhere we could stay, which was on their parents' plot.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't exactly a very good. It wasn't a good decision from my husband's point of view.
No. He didn't like it so much.
Well, no, he really didn't. But he understood the difficulties that I'd had the first time I was married. Mm. So when I was married first time round, it was quite there were highs and lows, and it wouldn't change a thing, because I think it's important to
learn from it.
Accept that all the factors in your life make you the person that you are.
Yeah.
But when I was young, I had to put up with quite a lot of hardship. We very often didn't have any money and enough to eat, and many days. Probably, I looked jolly fit if you look at old photos. But we used to make sure that. My eldest son Julian had 3 meals a day, but we didn't have 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
It was we didn't always know where the next money was coming from.
Yeah.
We used to rely quite heavily on poaching.
Really.
And if my husband and my brother-in-law, who used to live with us, didn't do the poaching, we used to have it brought to us.
What kind of things would that be then?
Oh yeah, everything. But trout was a good one, so we used to have trout quite a lot.
Yeah.
Rabbits, hares.
I don't think I've ever had
venison occasionally.
Really, yeah. I don't think I've ever had trout before.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Nice fish.
Lovely fish. Yeah, miss it. I miss it now.
Yeah.
That's
amazing.
All those sorts of things. if they didn't come and we couldn't earn any money, then I used to rely heavily on my parents.
Yeah.
So quite often we would go and Mum would make me up a bag full of groceries.
What did they both do then?
Pardon?
What did they both do
My
for that work
parents.
when you were that old?
My dad was a school teacher,
Yeah.
and he was he'd had other jobs, and he was a little bit like Huw. I often say Huw is a little like him,
Yeah.
because he was a little bit. I think he may have had ADHD,
Yeah.
and he was a bit. I'll do this job and I'll do that for 6 months, then I'll do that for 4 months, then I'll do this for 8 months, and so on and so forth.
Scatty.
Yeah, but then he had to go in the army, and I think it was when he was in the army that he started the process of becoming a teacher. But even after he was a teacher, he still did loads of other different things.
Yeah.
So he couldn't sleep for more than a few hours a night. So he would teach during the day, and then go out and do evening jobs and sometimes overnight work as well.
So he couldn't sleep?
No, he couldn't sleep.
He literally couldn't do it himself. Like he'd have to get back up again. And
No, he didn't need any more than a few hours sleep.
yeah. Just how he rolled.
That's just how he lived. So he used to do other jobs in between. He was one of the first people to drive cars that were driven by Calagas. So he did test driving for Calagas driven cars.
Yeah.
So they'd be given set mileage to go all around the country, and so he would happily finish his day job, have a bit of something to eat, jump in one of the Calagas cars, 4 Cortinas mainly, and drive to Bournemouth and back, or other set routes.
I think I know the brand. Cala. It's still about, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
You see them on the canisters that you can get for caravans and things like that.
Yes, that's what most people would use on their caravan cookers.
Yeah.
But
I didn't even know that was a thing.
no, and of course it's possible to convert vehicles now to gas.
LPG, is that the same thing?
LPG, it's the same, similar.
Yeah.
But my dad was very much involved in that, one of the first people. He also did other things like teaching singing lessons, and he worked at the chicken factory shunting the lorries for a time.
Yeah.
He worked for the NAFI, and then he ran his own nursery school.
NAFI, did you say?
Navy, Army, Air Force.
Oh, the Navy, yeah.
Like supermarket, they had supermarket, but the supermarket used to have a van at that time.
Yeah.
And the van would be loaded up with goods, and the van would drive around to the army quarters. Because we used to live in Aldershot, which is a military town, and
there's lots of work in that way.
We weren't part of the army at all, but there's obviously another big side of civvies, but it was a very big military establishment in those days, not so much now.
Yeah.
And he used to, so it just happened that he got a job there. So
How about your mum?
Mum looked after us until my youngest brother started school, and then she went to work for the Airborne Forces Security Fund as a secretary.
Right.
And she was a secretary to the, so she was a civvy working for the military personnel. She worked with a fellow called Colonel Bishop for a long time. Anyway, he retired, and she worked for a chap called Major Steggles, and they ran the Airborne Forces Security Fund.
Yeah.
So she would have to deal with people who had been in the Airborne Forces and often been invalided out for one reason or another. So they
for injury, or you mean?
Yeah, injury, so bombings, shootings, all sorts of things.
Wow.
PTSD, all sorts.
Did she talk about it a lot to you, or not a lot?
She didn't talk about it a lot because it was obviously there were personal circumstances of these people that you wouldn't normally. But I know that's the kind of thing she used to do.
Yeah.
So often an application would be made because the person had had difficulty getting back into work or whatever it is, and they needed funds. They needed to, help to get back on their feet for one reason or another. So she'd be involved in that, and she was also involved in when they have the annual trips to go over to France and other places where the grave sites are and that kind of thing. So she would do that, and often be invited to the big dinners where all the bigwigs were. I can remember her coming home with frog legs on one occasion. And saying this in a tissue, and saying this was one of the things I was given, but I couldn't eat it, and she brought it home to show us. It was quite interesting.
Couldn't eat it? How do you mean?
Well, she couldn't face that kind of thing.
No. Too
bit too way out,
Too much like an animal. It looks too much like an animal.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it's important for things to look like an animal, and I try and be a vegan now.
Do you?
And often slip up, often think, blow it, and if it's free, rather than bin it, because I don't believe in waste, I'll eat it, no matter what it is, or almost no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's a shame that a lot of young people, young children in particular, have no idea when they're being given sausage and burger, etc., that actually comes from a live animal.
No, it's completely kind of hidden from them, isn't it?
Completely hidden.
Yeah.
So all those years ago, I go back to that Howard Jones song, where he says about the screams and etc. So was it 2 different songs? There were more than one song, I'm sure, written many in the 70s and 80s. And it is completely hidden. If you said to the child as they were being given their, slices of things that resemble plastic, this was made from a live chicken that runs around on the grass and pecks and has chicks, I think it might put a lot of people off, strangely enough. So
Did you listen to what Jamie said about it? He said...
no, I haven't listened to Jamie's yet.
Good.
I want to.
He said... I know it takes a lot of time and you've got things to do. Quite long episodes.
All the time in the world, love. I just forget things.
Anyway, he said, what did he say? He said that once I think he said, I realised that I couldn't kill one myself.
No.
Therefore I stopped.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I asked him, I said, because I'm not vegetarian, but I asked him and I said, why? And, he said that and I thought, that makes you think, like, I don't think I could either. How did you come to being... I suppose you were vegetarian first.
Yeah, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan.
Really, yeah. The full ladder.
Yeah, gradually down.
Yeah.
But I should have known a long time ago that I wouldn't want to kill one myself, because on a very rare occasion, when there was an injured chick on the road, I ran over it to make sure it was dead. It's not nice.
No, well, they're just suffering, aren't they?
Even when it's suffering, it's not good. And there have been very rare occasions when I've been involved in the murder of an animal. And but going back to those old days with my first husband and the Travellers, my brother-in-law bought a lot of rabbits that were bred for the table. And the reason he bought them was that the chap had bred them with a butcher in mind, and for some reason or other they weren't able to sell them to that butcher. That butcher said no or changed his mind or whatever.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law went out and bought them about 20 rabbits, great fat things, all white, and he killed them one by one with a blow on the back of the head.
Wow.
I was there, and I didn't like it.
It affected you then?
It affected me even then. And
how old were you?
I was with Tookie when I was sort of 16 to 23-ish.
Yeah.
22, 23-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
23. And so it was during that period of time, and it was probably in the latter part of that. I might have been about 20. Yeah. So if I knew at 20 that if my brother-in-law had said, here you do one, I just said no, I ought to have made up my mind. But in fact what I really thought was, thank God we've got something to eat, because of the times when we didn't have.
Yeah.
It's
a different world now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the options that people have got are endless.
No, absolutely.
Almost, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. And it's not like I didn't in those days learn about the different things that you could eat from the wild, that were plants either, because we did, and about making sloe gin and all that sort of stuff, because I used to utilise everything that grew wild.
Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't really dawn on me, and I just got on with life.
Yeah.
But in this later time, I was already pescatarian. I think I was vegetarian when Huw became a vegan, and then I followed suit.
Oh, so it wasn't too long ago then?
Not too long ago.
Right, okay.
Not too long ago. It's taken me a long, long time. It's hard to give up fish because I absolutely love things like trout and salmon and all the best ones,
Yeah.
So it's hard to quite give up things, and it's easier for me to say that I'll never say never, because that way I know it's a choice.
Yeah.
If I'd made up my mind, you cannot have this, you cannot have that, then I'd feel more attracted to have what I was banning myself from having.
Yeah.
Whereas I say, well, if you really want a piece of fish, just go and have it. And in fact...
It's like, oh, no, I won't. Yeah.
No, I won't.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But I get along with it quite well. There's a lot of... the supermarkets are full of vegan things now, so it's not really a problem.
No.
And it's just day to day.
Not like it used to be.
Not a problem at all.
How did Huw come to do that then? Did he
I
explain
think
it
it's
to you?
because he has seen, as I have, some of these really awful videos which feature some of the worst methods in farming. So I've seen one of the worst ones I've seen is pigs, and I think it's absolutely horrendous the way that pigs are kept in such narrow, confined spaces. Even to give birth, they're not able to move around, to settle down. Yes, they are on good farms. Yes, they are on well-controlled farms, well-inspected farms. But there are farms where it still happens.
Yeah. Can't guarantee.
All the sorts of things like the fact that for us to have that dairy milk, the calves are taken away from the mothers and fed powdered milk, so we can have the milk that's intended for them, and they're taken away sometimes only a day old. And the mothers can hear the calves crying because they're not off the farm, they're just in another bit. The mothers are crying, the calves are crying, they can hear one another. It's torture.
Yeah.
It's complete torture.
Yeah, it is. If that was a human, it would be despicable, yeah.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you've got to think, I suppose, isn't
And
it?
the thing is, if you then watch the lovely films which feature people lying down in the grass with their pet cow, and the cow loving that person and being you do know they're like a dog or any other animal that we welcome into our daily lives. They have feelings, they have thoughts, they can form attachments. They're different. But what makes us superior? Why are we superior?
Oh, we are.
God put us here to look after the others, not to exploit them.
Yeah, well, I feel like we only understand ourselves, really, and we don't even really understand that. So for a human to understand another species is quite... It's very removed from what we are.
It is removed, but...
It's not possible. It's just that most people don't think about it, do they?
Yeah, exactly. And that learning has to come into it. People have to be taught, and it's not a thing that's taught. I have a vegan friend who isn't allowed to say things in school, even when they're discussing diet, nutrition, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's in the right ballpark.
Yeah, she can't really say anything.
Wow.
So we're not being open and honest and straightforward with our children, who are the ones we're actually trying to save the world for.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of evidence for and against different things, but in my mind I also think that growing beef is a big problem for the world, because you can only grow so much beef on a piece of land where we could fill hundreds of, probably thousands more, by growing soya, which is a very quick growing plant and can be adapted into almost anything.
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it?
And also cow poop is hugely bad for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So
methane. Yeah.
Three major things could happen in this world, which is stop cutting down the rainforests, fly less aeroplanes, and stop growing beef.
Yeah. My dad's
probably
I don't know if he'll stick to it, because he changes his mind quite a lot. But at the moment, and for the last few years, to be fair, he said he doesn't want to get on a plane again.
Good for him.
And I imagine you feel a similar way about it.
Yeah, I would probably try and take any other route if I had to go abroad.
That's what he's done. Yeah, he's driven to places and things like that, which obviously still some emissions, but I suppose if he says, well, yeah, but the plane's going anyway, some people say to him, but I suppose if everyone says that, then nothing changes. But
no.
If some people start to drop off and not decide to fly to places, then there's less planes in the sky.
I hoped that COVID would do something, because we all quickly realised how the planet began to regenerate.
Yeah.
And we heard, smelt differences. And I thought people would think, oh, I've learned how to work from home. Surprise, surprise. I never figured I could sit at my computer instead of sit in a board meeting.
Yeah.
You no need to even drive to work, never mind fly to work.
Yeah.
I know a colleague, that's the wrong word, somebody I know flies to America on a regular basis, and I'm going, but why?
Yeah. Why do you need to? Yeah.
Why? When you did that from home previously, during COVID.
It is amazing what you can do from home now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if there was, they'll never introduce that law. There's too much money tied up with it.
So how much money is there in the air aviation industry? It's massive. It's one of the biggest industries, isn't it?
Exactly. So
that's the problem, isn't it?
People are just too tight-fisted.
Well, yeah, and we're addicted to many things, and money is one of the big ones. And people who earn lots of money become very addicted to money.
Yeah. And, I do agree. But when you have any amount of money in the bank, it becomes a problem. Well, what do I do with this? How should I save that?
Yeah.
What's the best way I can get a return on this or that? Oh my goodness, I've got to do something. I need to get an accountant. I don't know how to do these or this figures. It was a lot more simple when I didn't have any.
Yeah.
I found it much more simple.
Really?
And I stopped working a long time ago.
Yeah.
Firstly, I had children to look after, as you're well aware.
Yeah.
And I thought that there was no point in having children to have somebody else look after them.
No.
I actually begrudged sending them to school.
It's kind of pointless, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think
school, I mean, yeah.
One parent at least needs to be looking at, in my opinion, for me personally, I wanted to be looking after my children.
I agree with that, yeah.
But I didn't, when they were very young, it was a lot easier because my husband used to start work earlier in the morning and come home earlier in the afternoon, and I could go out in the evening and he'd take over.
Yeah.
Hugely good system, and my father-in-law lived with us, who was incredibly good with the boys. And Trevor was a fantastic father, and he used to do his bit, so that was possible.
You do need that, don't you? They need contact with their own flesh and blood.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that working, it only works for... People don't seem to realise that we only need enough to live. We don't need to be rich. We don't need to be seeking something to be a happy person.
Yeah.
I think it is important to be happy, and it's important to feel loved. Money isn't the answer to happiness and love and health.
Makes no difference. Yeah.
For me, as soon as I realised that I could get by on my bit of pension that my husband left me, let's do it. I'd rather be poor and happy and relaxed. And I'm not a very good employee anyway, because I speak my mind and I tend to tell people what I think.
Yeah.
So
you're like my dad. My dad's similar to that. He says he's never really got on well working for other people, because you just can't. He finds it hard to respect someone if they do something he doesn't like. He finds it hard to bite his tongue.
Yeah, I
suppose
find it hard
the same.
Because I used to think that I was more intellectual than some people.
Mm.
I've gradually learned there are a lot of people who are more intellectual than me. It's taken a lot of years.
Yeah.
But at that time, even if I wasn't any kind of intellectual, I used to know that there were some people who were dead thick.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, dead thick people can be your boss.
Yeah,
They can be your manager, they can be your supervisor.
Just so happens, that can happen.
And
yeah, definitely.
So depending upon the company, I felt okay about it when I worked for the company that my brother was one of the directors for, because I knew he wasn't a complete idiot,
Yeah, and you could level with him in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have had to work in other periods of time as a bus driver, but they were a bit thick sometimes.
How long did you do that for?
Not really awfully long. It feels like it was a long time because it was a big issue. But really and truly, it was about 5.5, 6 years, something like that only. But it was in the nice times of when I started driving first of all, I went coach driving for I don't even know if they're still going. They might be, for a coach company called Altonian in Alton, Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I worked for them for a little bit. And then I changed to Tillingbourne Bus Company, which isn't working anymore. It went bust. And in those early days, we could look after the passengers, which I used to think quite important. So I'd be able to pull up my bus, go down the steps, help somebody in with their pushchair, their shopping, this and that. If a lady said, "Oh, you know where I live, don't you?" Yeah, I'd pull up and I'd let her off where her
Quite a
house
rewarding
was.
job then.
Very rewarding.
Yeah, you feel like you're doing a service for many people.
Yeah, very good in that respect. There was some good camaraderie as well went on.
What kind of routes were you doing then? Like who were you taking to where? Was it all different?
Yeah, it was all different because we had one what we called early shift.
Yeah.
Which started more like 7. Well, I had to be there about 7. I think the first pick-up was 7:25. And then we had one which the later start started about 11 or so, and that was the one that went on latest into the evening. Yeah. So you knew in that early shift you're going to take people to the railway station, and on the late one you're going to collect people from the railway station. Yeah. But most of them were just gathering people up from their houses in various estates and roads and dropping them at the shops.
Really, yeah.
And taking them back. Yeah. So we got to know people.
But you get to know some characters.
Yeah, you see the same people every week.
Yeah.
I took photos of a number of them when I was about to leave there. Yeah. And I got to know some nice people. And there's some awful things happened as well. One lady who was actually, I'll say aunt in inverted commas, of one of the other drivers, but I don't think she was really his aunt.
It's the sort of superficial one.
Yeah, when she knew I was leaving, she gave me, she came with a parcel one day, and she knew I was getting married as well. And I said, "Oh, that's lovely." She said, "No, it's not really lovely." She said, "It's just a dust gatherer." And I'd never heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
She meant just an ornament,
Yeah.
But after I'd left the company, she used to live in a caravan park. Her caravan burnt down and she died.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was pretty awful because I'd known her for those
shocking to find out.
Years, absolutely ghastly. So
oh wow,
I kind of kept the dust gatherer for many years in her memory, but eventually I parted with it because I parted with a lot of things. Moving here, as you remember,
yeah,
I had to get rid of things. But that's ghastly.
You find that hard to do that?
To what?
To let go of things.
Let go of things, yeah, I do. I'm Huw all over, or Huw is me all over. Yeah. A complete hoarder, and it needs must. But I still have boxes I haven't unpacked yet in the shed. But it's unsurprising because when we moved up to Aberfoyle from Surrey,
yeah,
there were boxes when we left there we had never unpacked.
Wow.
But I'm not sure what started that off really. Perhaps because we came from an age where we didn't have many things. I mean,
Right.
my mum.
So you clung on to the things that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. Because my mum one year just made toys for us.
Really?
When we were kids, she sewed them all up.
Yeah.
I remember one of mine was the very un-PC thing now, which was a golly.
Yeah.
And somebody else's was almost entirely of tights, and it was called Stringy Joe or something like that.
Yeah.
So when you we were given pocket money. We were given sweet money once a week, threepenny bit, to go to the shops. And I used to have 2 and 6 when I was quite young, living in an older shop. We had to save our money up to go out and buy a toy. When we moved to Ash, there was a shop called Tolly's.
Yeah.
I was more into cars than I was dolls. And Tolly's would keep a book, and you could go and pay them 6pence, a shilling, something like that, each week, until you paid for the toy on the shelf.
Yeah. So it was a long, drawn-out process to get to that point.
To acquire something like that. And that was one of the things I bought, only not that actual one. Mine was stolen.
So the truck.
The truck.
With the horses.
Chipperfield Circus.
Yeah.
And of course circuses were not... There's nothing wrong with those days, we didn't know where we were thick.
Yeah.
But so I was so sad about that for many years that I went and bought that one to replace it in a toy fair at Farnham in Surrey. Yeah. But it was... You can see how important it was. I've got it on display. Do you see? Yeah. Because if you've had to save your few pence, your shilling, etc., here and there to go and acquire things,
well, you've got value in the thing that you've got.
Tremendous value.
I think. Well, we're just surrounded by stuff nowadays, aren't we? And no one's got. I was just thinking, like, I've just bought this, and it's come with a load of accessories.
Yeah.
I bought microphones. I'm talking about the microphone we're recording this on.
Yeah.
It's got microphones. It's all just turned up in a box. It's nice. I spent a few £100 on all of it. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I'm good. I'm good at, like, sort of not spending too much money, and like that's quite a unique thing for me to do. That I don't normally do that, but I thought, well, I'm enjoying this, and I don't think I'm going to get bored of it, so I'm going to invest a bit in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
everything is too accessible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's too accessible for children.
It's too accessible, yeah.
Never mind the adults who are actually earning money and, you know, have the right really to say, well, I've earned that, I can buy that. But I think television has been to blame because of the advertising that can go on. Showing
you everything that you could buy.
Yeah, and so people come along now with even if it's only the Argos catalogue, let's face it, kids come along and say, I've opened the Argos catalogue and I'd like this, 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 this and this for Christmas.
Yeah. And you've got to be pretty, you've got to be disciplined to tell them that that's not okay.
No.
And I think many people struggle with that because they themselves are addicted to stuff as well.
Yeah.
Buying things and new things.
Yeah.
What my dad does with his auction, he generally buying and selling for people things that aren't really worth much. You know, so think of the stuff around you that's the amount of effort that's gone into making these things over the years. For example, Hoovers, things like that. Think of all the work that's gone into that. It's just so someone could chuck it away after 2 years.
Yeah, I know.
And pay, you know, a tenth of the price for it.
But do you realise the problem is, though, strangely enough, Hoovers was one of the things my dad used to sell in his spare time.
Really?
And when we used to go on holiday, he would sell Hoovers where we were on holiday while we had a nice break, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's digressing.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think things are made now to only last until the warranty runs out.
Yeah, or to replace the last one. That's the main thing, isn't it? Replacing the last thing that's not that different.
Whereas once upon a time, even when I was young, I can remember having a cooker or washing machine that would last for ages and ages and ages. And then, if it went wrong, you'd have someone come out and fix it. You know, just pay them. So it's just people always want the next step up. They want the best. Oh well, that freezer is no good now because it's not at whatever its rating they need to be now. I'll go and have a new one. Yeah, but it's cost you all the money you've saved in. You would have saved that in just keeping the one with the not quite so good rating.
Yeah, it would have lasted you another 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah.
So crazy. But yes, it is difficult to decide to get rid of things.
Yeah.
And particularly people who read books. Books are very evocative.
Yeah.
So just having a shelf full of books, I find it harder to get rid of the ones that I've read already than the ones I haven't read.
Wow. Because you've got a connection with them. Especially if you enjoyed it.
Yeah. But having to come here and downsize, I eventually sorted out a lot of my very old books from when I was quite young and realised that I couldn't give them away to charity, they were too tatty. I wouldn't even be able to read them again because the backs were gone, the fronts were gone, the pages were falling out and they were brown.
Yeah.
So what I did was I just took photos of the fronts of all the books before I binned them.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I've taken photos of things.
Now, those pictures give it back to me.
Yeah.
But I had to decide that there was something that had to go.
It reminds you of it enough, I think.
It does. Enough.
I used to, when I moved out of not my first home, I've lived in loads of different homes, but when I moved out of my house at Hennings Close in Nath Park and moved to Lee Road with my brother, my room, I had it set up with lots of like strange artwork and things that I'd made myself, and I knew that I had to just basically rip that down, and I couldn't really take it down in one piece, so I just took a photo of it, and then just binned it. Yeah. And I immediately forgot about it, but every now and then I look through my photos and see it and go, that was good.
Yeah, I think, the beauty of the mobile phone, I mean, I absolutely adore the past and the life that I was brought up in when I was a child.
Yeah.
But technology is a fantastic thing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I just love modern technology. I just love that we can look things up straight away.
Yeah.
In my childhood, we had a huge set of encyclopedias that my dad acquired from probably somebody he worked for. Yeah. And everything we wanted to look up was all in those black and white encyclopedias.
Yeah.
Now it's just dit. We have it on the phone. So we never have to think, I wonder how old so-and-so is. How old is so-and-so? I'll look it up.
Yeah.
And we have the answer at our fingertips, and I do love that. I love modern technology.
It's amazing that we've got to that point, and it's so easy to sort of take it for granted, obviously, because that's what we're always doing. But when you stop and think about it, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But sometimes older is better. I've had that old stereo on there repaired, and works fine, but I managed to blow up the new stereo I bought. So one of these new little turntables.
Yeah.
And just by plugging the wrong plug in the back, I heard it, so I go.
Yeah.
And I took it to be repaired, and they said, no, you've completely, if it had been an old one, you'd put the wrong plug in it, you might have just damaged the safety gadget en route sort of thing. This didn't have a safety gadget, you've blown it completely.
Didn't have one.
It's no good now at all.
So
throw out the innards and just keep the case.
What kind of things do you listen to on your hi-fi?
My taste is very eclectic. It's everything across the board.
And are you listening to stuff that you've had on vinyl for a long time, or do you collect stuff still? Or?
No, I don't collect anything still. If I want to listen to something, I'll put it on Spotify.
Yeah.
So I'm on Owens Spotify.
Yeah.
So I don't pay for it.
Yeah. He's got you covered on that.
I said you can have me on it and share it with you, but I can't contribute. So he said, fine, that's all right.
Yeah.
But if I listen to the stereo, normally it's classical music.
Really?
With some exceptions, but it's a classical one on there now. I can't remember exactly which one.
Yeah.
Hebrides Overture or something like that. So I got my favourites.
When you listen to it, do you just sit and listen?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It depends what it is.
Yeah.
Probably the Hebrides Overture, for example, I might sit and completely listen to, because in a dark room with your eyes shut, you're in the Outer Hebrides listening to those waves crashing on the shore.
It's amazing, isn't it? What music can do.
Music has got that, but particularly classical music has got that.
Very emotional, isn't it?
Yeah,
Got a lot of
hugely
emotional content.
Yeah. But on Spotify, it's really, really wide, because obviously I like the music of some of the music, not all. Because I'm not one of these people who thinks, Slade, who was around in the 1970s, I loved that track of theirs, I must love all of them. No.
One tune.
All of them were rubbish, that one was great.
Yeah.
So I do that. It's very, very bit of this, bit of that, bit of everything. So.
Yeah. I was very like artist focused at one point when I was younger, and I used to be like I was an album guy. You know, I used to like an album, and I'd go on about that album and listen to it in its entirety multiple times. But now I'm a bit more like yourself. Like I like to, like you say, most artists have got one tune that's like. That's a special one that sticks out.
Yeah, then you might not ever hear of them again.
Yeah.
But sometimes they are going on in the background, but they haven't brought out that really good track. And sometimes it's not necessarily the one that made it into the charts, but one that appeals to me.
Yeah,
if it appeals to me, it doesn't matter whether it appeals to anybody else.
Sometimes it's surprising though. You listen to an album throughout, and you hear a tune, and you go, "Well, why isn't that tune much bigger?"
Yes.
But like you say, it just resonates with you in a way. Yeah, it's like the Led Zeppelin tune. I was listening to it earlier, Down by the Seaside, and it's just like, it's amazing. It's a really good tune. It's but it's not. It doesn't sound like Led Zeppelin. It sounds like something else. It sounds like something quite. It's in a way, it's kind of like easy listening almost.
Yeah.
It's weird, but yeah, music's amazing, isn't it?
It certainly is. I would hate to be with people often say dreadful things that we should never even contemplate, like what would you rather, lose your hearing or lose your sight or something. I think hearing, because if I couldn't hear music, I think I'd really suffer from the lack of it.
Well, like you just said, you can close your eyes and have a better time with music because your eyes are closed almost. Yeah. And
for those ones that fall into the having lyrics in them, some lyrics are so important that I want to hear it again and again and again. It might not even mean that much to anybody else. And one of my it's not actually a particularly recent track, but one that I discovered more recently is one of the sort of rap hip hop genre, and it's Courageous, Common, and what's she called? Paris somebody, anyway, that girl. And it's actually the person I would like to be.
Yeah.
Because it's about being yourself.
Yeah.
And never mind what anybody thinks.
Hard to be, isn't it?
Be courageous. Because I've had to wear lots of different hats.
Throughout your life.
And I still do, to some degree. It depends who I'm with.
Do you think you're a people pleaser?
Oh, yes, I am. But that's because partly we please ourselves when we please other people.
Yeah.
So it's quite a selfish thing. But, it's a two-way thing.
At least it helps the other person, though, if they enjoy your company.
The other person. Yeah, exactly. So there is a certain element there. It's about being able to relate to the person or people that you're with. So
I find that quite exciting. When I meet someone and I can't quite get it, it's okay, this is challenging. Like, how can I level with this person and sort of get to know them?
Yeah.
It's harder with some people than it is with others, isn't it?
Yes.
Some people are open to it.
Yeah.
And some people aren't.
Yeah,
It's
true. It's true.
Yeah.
But I suppose I'm not so much of a trier with new people now. It seems bizarre because I probably meet more new people now. And sometimes I come back from too much involvement because I think that there's for me, there's a limit to how much I can share myself out.
Yeah, of course,
I don't want to be partially committed, so it's better to be not committed.
Yeah. Don't bother unless you can do it properly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you get that.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I think I'm learning that. Doing this is quite interesting because speaking to people I would never normally talk to you like this, unless I was doing this, which is kind of a shame, really.
Well, yeah, it is.
But it's nice that we're doing it anyway.
It's a very strange thing because Huw seems to have talked to everybody's parents.
Yeah.
He's just that lad.
Yeah.
But do you know, I think why that arose was because when he was born, he was a young boy. He lived in a house with 3 adults already in,
Yeah.
i.e. mum, dad and granddad. And we used to have a constant visitor, which was Auntie.
Yeah.
And she wasn't really an auntie, the kids called her Auntie then.
Yeah.
So he was surrounded by 4 adults who never, ever talked to him like he was a baby.
Yeah, he said this, yeah.
So we never called things a pussy wussy or any other silly stupid things that people, you really, oh look, a doggy, it isn't, it's a dog.
Yeah.
It's a dog.
Yeah.
Call it by its real name. The child will grow up knowing what the real name is.
And you're not pretending to be something you're not in front of your kid.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And so he quickly learned how to participate in conversations and earwigging, and then he kind of picked it up as he went along.
Yeah.
But we used to include him when we could. But he was a young child, so he obviously missed some of it.
He's an incredible communicator.
He is.
He is really good at it. It just comes. You can just tell that it comes to him completely naturally. And I don't think there's anyone I would rather talk to of my age.
Oh,
no, really,
yeah.
Seriously, I think he's. He just gets you.
I think he does get you. Yeah. If I'm honest, I think he does. And he loves people.
Yeah, he does.
He loves company. But he particularly loves his, like yourself, long-term friends.
Yeah. Me too, definitely.
I can remember him saying to me some time back, I wouldn't like to say which girl it was.
Yeah.
But he said, I will always put my friends first.
Yeah. Because
you will come and go, and they will stay.
Yeah.
And he sincerely meant that.
Yeah, you can tell.
So, I think that's hugely important.
He's very genuine and very genuine. Mature in some ways, like for his age, like in his like outlook on things, and he's got a lot of confidence as well.
He is a very confident lad.
Yeah.
And he's as well as genuine, he's just this open person as well. I think he gives a lot of himself away, and he doesn't mind at all. Yeah. You either take him or you don't. Yeah. But he calls it like it is as well. He does. He wouldn't mess about. If you're being a dick, he'll tell you.
Yeah, he will. Yeah.
So, if you've just thrown up and knocked all the chairs over in some place, you'll say you're being a little dick. He will say it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's important to let people know
what they've done isn't right.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's just a bit silly.
Silly.
Yeah, definitely. You can't just. I'm trying to do that with this a little bit, like trying to learn to challenge someone if I don't agree, not just going like, because you want to learn from each other, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do.
I think it's important. You grew up in quite a big family then, didn't you?
Yeah, I did do.
How many siblings did you have?
Yeah, crumbs. Well, I was the eldest of 6.
Yeah.
But we also had foster brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And there may have been more than I can remember, but I think that there were 5 that I can remember, but they weren't all together with us at the same time.
No.
And but when I was quite young, we had Lillian and Philip. They were so they were a bit older than me, about 6 and 8 years older than me, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I had 5 younger ones, and it was probably a good job that I was around to look after them at times, because my dad was didn't really notice what was going on with the younger ones sometimes.
Too many of them to deal with.
Yeah. He was a great dad, because he used to take us out a lot. But we used to go to places which weren't so... there would be a lot more safety attached to, like going up a castle, for example. But my youngest sister was very slim, and she was small enough to go out through the gun slits and the turrets. Yeah. So I'd have to be aware of that. And another sibling fell in the pond, Thursley Pond I think it was, and was drowning until I managed to hoik them out.
Really?
And we ran up to my dad and said, this has happened, blah, blah, blah. And he just went there, and patted them on the head.
Wow.
And we went, do what?
Yeah.
And there were some other random people in the car park who ran up and helped. Because he was a bit woolly in that respect. He was hugely intelligent, but not practical.
Really?
So I used to very much look out for the younger ones.
Yeah.
It was nice being in a big family. I loved it.
Yeah. Lots going on.
Yeah,
always something to talk about and
yeah.
something happening.
Yeah. I used to try and think that I was in charge, and I suppose in some respects I was, until my next brother down grew up, and then he was very wise, and so people used to ask him to do the things like help them with their finance, help them get a mortgage, that kind of thing. So he was very clever in that respect. And he's the one who killed himself, of course.
Really?
Richard. He was 31, I think, at the time.
Why did he? Do you know why? Or?
I think that he found the world a difficult place. He and I talked at one time about joining the Greenpeace ship because of the cruelty in the oceans, amongst other things. He was hugely sensitive. He couldn't watch TV programmes which featured wildlife killing other wildlife. I appreciate it's the way of life. That is natural life. They have to do it to survive. He couldn't watch it. He would just be in tears. He couldn't cope with that kind of thing. So he was a sensitive person, incredible hard worker, and he was very loved by everybody. But at some point it obviously just got too much for him.
In his own head?
He had some hysteria. I mean, I used to work at the company then, as I was saying earlier. And I can remember him coming down and talking to us and saying, how's it going today? And I said, between middling and worse, or something like that. And he just had like hysteria. And I thought,
What is that then?
It's like when the emotions are overwhelming.
It's like a panic attack.
It can be laughing hysteria, it can be crying hysteria, it can be something that's between both.
Is it a little bit like bipolar?
I don't think it is. I don't think he had a bipolar nature. I could be wrong.
It was a different time, wasn't it? So that's when people didn't have names for things like that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was also disappointed. I can remember telling him I was thinking of leaving the company, and I decided to go and work caring for the elderly. And he said, all of you have something, he said, and I have nothing. And I said, no, I said, you're a very successful businessman who has worked his way up from, I used to drive the van, then to the salesperson, and you're a company director. You have a wonderful wife and a small son, and you own your own house. He said, everything, including my shoes, belongs to the bank. He said, that's what I have. And he said, you all have a vocation or something. You know, various of our siblings had all got something. Right. The youngest one was a nanny, the other one was a social worker, another one was going into teaching, or it might have been a qualified teacher by then, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
And I think he was studying, actually. And youngest one went on to be a teacher, and I'd got this wish and desire to help working with the elderly, which he saw as a vocation. But he had everything, but he said, no, everything belongs to the bank.
How true was that? Did he mean?
I think he
in
meant
a lot of debt,
everything was mortgaged up to the hilt, I can only imagine.
Yeah. It felt like it was never going to end.
I thought you think it was never going to end. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really. So you're not 100% sure in yourself why it happened. Really.
Of course, he didn't. I don't know exactly what happened, but he didn't leave a note or anything. So, in the court declared it was one of those ambivalent things. They couldn't for certain say whether he intended to do it, or whether he intended to cry out for help.
Yeah, and accidentally,
Or it certainly wasn't accidentally, because he sat in the garage and put the exhaust in the window, via a tube. So he meant, or he was in a garage that was filled with.
But he may not have meant to actually kill himself.
He may not have, they said. But
he thought he might be saved, or he thought,
But I believe he intended to do it myself. I think he intended.
And you think he did, yeah?
I felt so badly for my sister-in-law, because. We all went to work like normal. He was supposed to make a couple of calls and then come into work.
Yeah.
And we kept wondering what was going on.
Yeah.
There was mobile phones weren't about, but the house phone was tried. A couple of the companies he was meant to call up, they were tried, and it didn't happen. So. Eventually, my sister-in-law went home at the end of the day, and as soon as she got out of the car, she went and collected the child from the childminder first, she heard the engine running in the garage and she knew instantly.
Because that was a common thing back in the day, wasn't it, for someone to commit suicide via that method?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So she opened the garage, it was too late, he was completely dead. Fortunately, Adam was asleep. She just left him in the car. She went to a neighbour for help and it just escalated from there.
Yeah.
So we obviously didn't know instantly. I came home from work. I went out to a church group. It was a youth group and we were running a quiz. Yeah. I came back from the quiz and I saw, this is one of my horrors, if I see an unexpected bicycle, because I saw a bicycle against the wall and I had a feeling it was my aunt's bike, and she had obviously come up to be with my mum. They'd told mum while I was out.
Oh, it's awful.
And my youngest sister and one of the others came and said to me, there's been a terrible thing has happened. Richard is dead, he killed himself. And I collapsed.
Yeah.
I collapsed. He was the closest one to me.
Oh, really?
He was the closest in age and he was the closest.
As in, on a friendship level sort of thing?
Yeah. So it was absolutely appalling.
I didn't know about that at all, I don't think, Jane. I don't think Huw told me about that.
No, of course it's not impacted on Huw's and Owens' lives, because we're talking about a life before they really thought of.
My mum's got a relation, I think he was Uncle Theo, I think his name was, and he killed himself in the bath, and I think he overdosed on something. She mentions it regularly, and obviously she was around when it happened. I don't think she was massively close to them, so it's different. But it's like you say, it's kind of like for Huw, it's probably just like, it's just as good as a story, really. Yeah. Because we didn't know, did he? He wasn't here. No. And same for Owen.
He knows all about it.
Yeah.
But it's not, he obviously feels regret from me.
Yeah.
That I regret that it happened. But we are talking about 1990. Yeah. So it's a number of years ago.
32 or something years ago, yeah.
Exactly. Double over his lifetime has gone since he died. and it's
Wow,
something that we have to move on with.
Do you think about it regularly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every day? Or
No.
once a week?
No, not really. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Things will remind you of him.
Yeah, totally. And in some respects, he came across as the confident person that Huw is, but he wasn't really. I don't think underneath he was a bit more. He was the sensitive one, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think about him. But I've had to go through a lot of. Makes me sound like I'm some kind of martyr. I'm no martyr.
Yeah.
I have been a witness to a number of people who have died, or I have lost, for want of another phrase, people who have died in quite a quick succession. And out of people that mattered to me, the first one was my own daughter, my own baby.
Yeah.
So she died when she was just 6.5 months old. Yeah. And she was born about 20 months after, when my first son was 20 months old. So in those early days, so I had her when I was about 18.
You're okay talking about that?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
She was born with a complicated form of hole in the heart.
Yeah.
But they didn't pick it up straight away. And when she was about 6 weeks old, I knew there was something wrong, and she would struggle to drink and get her breath at the same time. And I can remember walking up to the doctor's surgery, and they said, well, she has bronchitis or something like that. So I had to kind of accept that. Yeah. But I chose to go out shopping with my former sister-in-law and brother-in-law for a couple of days before Christmas, and I left her with my mum. And when I went out, of course there was no mobile phone scans, they couldn't get in touch with me. When I came back, she'd stopped breathing while Levi was looking after her. And Mum and Dad had put her in the car and driven at speed down to the doctor's surgery, and they'd gone over a bump and her heart had started going again and she'd started breathing again. Well, she was taken into hospital, and I think initially, when they put her in like a plastic oxygen tent, I think they thought at first she too had a severe form of bronchitis. They called it bronchiolitis. So, but of course, a few more investigative things happened, and they realised that she had a hole in the heart. So there was some surgery scheduled for some time hence. But in fact, I was at home one morning with my first husband early in the day, and the police came to the door and they said, your daughter is being put in an ambulance now and taken straight to the Brompton Hospital in London for surgery, because if she doesn't have it, she's going to die. Yeah. Well, my husband decided to go to work anyway. Yeah. Say more. So I managed to persuade a neighbour to take me to London, and we drove first to try and follow the ambulance, but we were just too late. But the ambulance people told us where to go. Yeah. And we drove up to London, and we were struggling to find it, and we flagged down a police car and said, can you lead us straight to the Brompton Hospital, we have to get there to sign the paperwork. Mm-hmm. And they put the blue lights on and we followed the ambulance to the door. So I got out and went in, and I had to sign the paperwork for the operation to go ahead. And so the first one went ahead, and she lived through that. She lived through a number of other operations, but we nearly always went up there, and they did provide accommodation on one or two occasions. You had to go down past the mortuary, under the road, up the other side, into a flat. Yeah. But other times we would just go up there either on the day, wait for her to have her operation, see that she'd come out and go home, that sort of thing. But on one occasion we chose not to go because it was expensive. We got a little bit of help from social services as a social worker in the hospital.
Yeah.
We chose not to go, and I wonder why there hadn't been the phone call at the appointed time. And eventually somebody called me and said the doctor is going to talk to you, and I said, well, I want to know what's happened. Something has gone on. And they said, no, it's better that the doctor talks to you about this.
Okay.
And I knew then she must be dead. And of course the doctor spoke to me and said, I'm afraid she died under the operation this time. Because what's happened is she had to breathe through one of these tracheotomy tubes, and they would grow over at the bottom, so they would have to open it, clean out the throat or whatever, trachea, and put a new one down. And it was a minor operation, but it was just too much. It was just one too much. She'd gone through so many, and that was the end of it. She died.
It almost feels insensitive to me to ask how you felt, but you can't explain.
No, do you know, the difficulty is, and I don't know why, I knew there was something wrong with her before she was even born.
Really?
I knew and had that sense within me that there was something wrong. So that even when she was born and they said, you've given birth to a lovely daughter, I said, is she all there? Is everything all right? And they said, yeah, she's got 10 fingers, 10 toes, everything looks fine. I said, there's something wrong, even the moment she was born. So my feelings about it had never been optimistic, and maybe that's the wrong thing. And I can tell you, I try not to have pessimistic thoughts, because I do think thoughts can do things in the world, and it's better to have positive thoughts. But at the time I didn't have optimistic thoughts.
Did you not feel like you were in control of that? It was just a feeling?
It's a very hard thing to describe, really. It was a kind of steel yourself, because this might not end well. But given that I was a young woman, I was very young then, to be having to deal with that situation and be married and have a toddler and work, because I used to work with my husband. In those days I used to do the driving because he'd lost his licence. And so I would drive him to we used to work together, so I used to work most days of the week, and we used to take the child with us most of the time, because we had outdoor work, cutting evergreens and things, and he used to be able to run around. So there was kind of a life that had to be got on with at the same time as all this was going on.
Yeah, you're busy with lots of things.
And but I kind of steeled myself, whereas my husband was hugely optimistic. So it didn't at first hit me as bad. Of course I was dreadfully upset, but it didn't hit me as badly as it hit him. He never got over it either. But I was okay for a number of years, and then a number of years later, in my mum's house one day, we were sorting out some boxes that were upstairs in a cupboard or in the loft, and I pulled out the box and found Amy's things inside, and I kid you not, she had so few things they would all fit in one little box. And it broke me completely, and then I was very depressed about what had happened. But it was 6 years, 7 years, I don't know, longer, 10 years.
You can't say how something's going to affect you, can you?
No. So that was quite a bad time, and
I feel for you. That's terrible.
And Julian has had to grow up without that, younger full sibling as well. And then I didn't want to go down that route again, because in fact my own husband had a brother who had died of a very similar complaint. Horace, he was the next oldest one to Tookie, and he died as a child of about 5 years old, which must have been pretty heartbreaking. They lost 4 children out of 9, I think, my parents-in-law.
Wow.
And so I was reluctant to have more children with my husband because I thought it might be that we got lucky with Julian and we might have another child with a similar thing.
Yeah.
But also things were never going to be easy with my husband anyway, as he was 20 years older than me anyway. And there was a wealth of difference between the traveller's lifestyle and the gorgy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it was always quite hard. I was never really fully accepted by the others.
Yeah.
I knew this when my brother-in-law died. Well, I'll skip a bit.
Yeah.
After my daughter died, both my parents-in-law died. First of all, my mother-in-law, who actually, when she came and saw my daughter in the coffin in the house, because they have a wake in the house, with a coffin, she said, "I won't be long behind you," and she wasn't. About 6 or 8 months later, and she'd gone. She's very old, 82, I think, 83. And then my father-in-law, the following summer, about 8 months later, he died. So he was about 84. Then my grandmother died. I think it was 1980, and I think she was 80.
Yeah.
A number of different relatives of my husband died as well. I can remember one of his uncles dying, my sister-in-law's father dying, and it just death. It was
surrounded by it.
Awful, ghastly period of time. Absolutely ghastly.
Yeah.
Is it any wonder really that we struggled to make our marriage work very well?
I managed as far as you did.
Yeah, it's amazing that it managed as far as it did.
Yeah.
And then we fell out of something really petty. And so I just upped sticks and took all the dogs. I was more interested in the dogs than anything else. I took the dogs and Jude and went to Mum's.
Yeah.
But I quickly realised I could only keep one dog really and had to take the other 2 back. So he gave one away to my sister-in-law in Somerset.
Yeah.
But
so I don't know what to say, Jane.
No, sorry, I seem to be saying plenty, don't I?
No, I'm not at all a problem. It's just it's intense.
Sorry, it was.
Yeah.
It was. The truth is, it was, and that we still had to live as well.
Yeah.
We still had to live and work and eat and be like normal.
Yeah.
But I think when it came to my dad died in 1989.
Yeah.
And he had cancer, and then Richard died the next year, who I just spoke about.
Yeah.
I think Richard was the one that stopped the clock, because for me, when Richard died, having had that kind of gap, except for Dad, who was elderly and had cancer, you expect people to die. I was so taken by it. I couldn't know how the world could keep on moving while I was in such grief that my brother had died. I didn't know how people could still be moving and getting in their cars and eating and drinking.
Yeah.
And yet within 2 or 3 days, or maybe even the next day or the day after, I went back to work and the people were all aghast and saying, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Because I have to be doing something. I cannot sit at home watching the world going by in the bubble of grief. I actually have to go to work and just try to work through it, try and be normal." So it was quite an awful period of time in history for me.
Very hard to do, I imagine that.
But it's all we learn. We learn from things. We understand other people then.
Yeah.
I've experienced so many different things that I've found it helps me with other people and their losses and their difficulties.
Makes it easier for you to level with them.
It certainly is.
Help them.
It certainly is, because there's that thing now that people have probably got used to, the idea that it's not good to pass on the other side of the street when you see somebody whose relatives died.
Yeah.
It's good to rush up and say, "I'm so sorry to hear." It's
Be
better.
there for them.
But I think people did pass by me sometimes and not know what to say. Strangely enough, the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't. The Jehovah's Witness people in the village came up when my daughter died and said they were so sorry to hear what had happened.
Yeah.
But I think people didn't know what to say in those days.
Yeah.
And I like to think I know what to say. That
Yeah.
I've got the gist of it now.
Well, you've had a tough old time with that, and that's a tougher time than most people have in their whole life. Never mind a smallish period of time in their life.
Probably.
So I suppose not to sort of put anyone else's ills down, but you've kind of seen it all, in a way.
I've seen it all. But this is why I often say to people, I feel as if I've lived several lives in my life. Lots of things have happened in my life, which feel like they're, and I know there are phases in anybody's, school, college, uni, work, marriage. Mine seem to be like compartmentalised. It was childhood. I was still a child when I got married, let's face it. Then it was that period of my life. Then it was the work period and losing Dad and Richard period of my life. And then it was a different period. And it seems like several little compact areas have been, I see them as separate lives.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So,
yeah.
But Julian has had to endure a lot of difficulty, and I regret the fact that Julian had a very disturbed childhood and a lot of upheaval in his life.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm most, I can't call it proud because proud implies that I had something to really do with it, but I'm happy about the fact that I have 3 sons who are wonderful.
They are, yeah. I don't know Julian really, but I love both of you.
They're all different.
I love Owen and Huw.
They're all different. They all have their own characteristics.
Yeah.
But Julian has, managed to grow up and be married to a wonderful woman who I wouldn't change for anybody.
Yeah. And
have 3 great kids, my granddaughters, who I love the whole family dearly. Yeah. But he had to put up with an awful lot, and he had to put up with not having anything. I can remember one Christmas where he had one thing. Maybe that was a good thing, but it wasn't when everybody around you had nothing, had loads of things, and you had nothing.
Yeah.
He had to.
Well, it makes you wonder how it affects them, don't you? I suppose.
He had to put up with an awful lot. But the younger boys have obviously lost their dad, and it was not a good age, I think, for Huw.
No, I always thought that, yeah.
So it was quite tough for Huw. I think it was tough for Owen. But I listened to Owen's podcast, and he said, well, actually I was more thinking about Mum and the other people, didn't he? Or worse to that effect.
Yeah, he did,
because he was able to be matter-of-fact about it. But nevertheless, I think he misses Dad more.
Mentions him a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah. But we make a point of that, though. We mention Trevor in the house all the time. It's like he's with us.
Yeah.
Because if I fail to talk about him, he becomes less real.
Yeah.
But he was real. He was a huge person. His being was big. It filled the space. It filled the room. It filled the life.
Yeah.
So if I stop talking about him, that being will slip away.
Yeah, you can still be here in a sense if you talk about him and remind each other of the things he did.
Yeah.
And the things he did for you all. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always say, well, Dad would have said this. Oh, do you remember when Dad did such? 'Cause I know that's not a very modern thing, but I always say Dad to the boys.
Yeah.
They know I mean Trev, but I always say Dad. I know people,
but I think that's
say Trev or Julie or whatever their name is, but I always say Dad.
Yeah, that's fine.
So he's still very big in our lives because everything. I have 2 of his Land Rovers. We have a garage full of his tools. We have things in our life which have been very big to do with him. But
I don't think I ever met him.
The person and the heritage the children have, they are part of him. They're his blood.
Yeah.
You know, but they had to deal with quite a difficult time. I think a very difficult time.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I hope Hugh's okay. I hope Owen's okay. I mean, I can only speak for Huw because I know Huw much better, and he certainly seems to be doing okay. So.
I think he's okay. They are okay, but I don't know why, really.
Yeah. Well, I think hardship is. I mean, look what you've endured. I think hardship builds you up in a way. If you make it through it, it only adds to your strength and sort of understanding maybe of the world.
Yeah, probably.
What's moving to Lincolnshire meant to you? How's it changed your life?
Completely, really.
You're saying it's another part of your life.
It is. It's like a whole new chapter. In fairness, you know, obviously it was a new chapter when I married Trev.
Yeah.
But we lived in Bookham, which is near Leatherhead, which is not far outside the M25.
Yeah.
And he benefited from the Thatcher years, old cow. And it was the only thing that she did for anybody. It probably wasn't the right thing, unfortunately. It wasn't good to sell properties that should have been council owned, but that's the Tories for you.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, he benefited by that because he and his dad were able to buy the property in which they lived. So I moved there, obviously. And otherwise it would have meant that Tom would have been on his own and etc. And Tom was very old.
Yeah.
So he always knew that when he died, that Trev and I and the boys would want to go somewhere else. And we thought of all sorts of places. And that story that Huw told you about the place in Wales is absolutely true.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't remember what the head teacher was wearing.
Yeah, he remembered it well.
When he told me about it, I remembered.
Yeah.
But it was awful. So we did look in lots of different places. That's the thing. One of the things that turned us off Wales anyway was the view was going to be built on, and the school was atrocious, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We wanted to get more for the money. It's not possible in the south of England. It's certainly not possible in Surrey, close to the M25, because everybody wants to live in commuter belt.
Yeah.
So
had to move somewhere else.
Had to. So we had the exciting time when we moved to Effingham that we referred to earlier.
Yeah.
Which wasn't very much fun for the boys. But we were there about 9 months, I think, or 10 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And then we came up here and looked at 3 different properties, I think. And when we went and saw Aberfoyle, as we came out, I said, I think this is going to be the one. And Trev said, yeah, I think this is going to be the one.
Both in agreement.
So we obviously came back a second time and brought the boys. And Huw, outdoor man, whoosh!
Yeah.
Yes!
Loved it.
You know, absolutely loved it. The fact that he could have space and do things outside, and he thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
Owen was a bit
nonplussed.
Wevs.
Yeah.
And when we came there, it made quite a big difference to me because I didn't really like the neighbourhood where we lived in Bookham, and I made the excuse that I didn't know my way because I didn't really want to go anywhere. So if I went out in the car, I would take Auntie with me and I'd say, well, you'll have to direct me, I don't know the roads. And she'd say, you must know the roads by now. I didn't want to know the roads by now. I didn't want to know that neighbourhood. I didn't want to know that area.
Yeah, didn't resonate with it.
Yeah, so I was pleased to get away from there. Didn't really have any friends there and came here and completely changed everything. I was able to go, I wanted to go to church, but I didn't engage with the churchgoers there. But when I came here and I started a Methodist church in the village, I immediately met people and got together with people who are still my friends now.
Nice.
And so from a personal point of view and from an outdoor point of view. And the early days there when the boys had to go to school, which we'd already sorted out before even coming here. You've probably heard all this before, because we came to Saxelby School before the property purchase had even gone through.
I didn't know that.
And we spoke to Mr. Graver, the head teacher there, fabulous bloke, much maligned,
Yeah.
and said we were focusing on the autism aspect of Owen at the time. We said we have an autistic child that needs one-to-one for 37.5 hours a week.
Okay.
And he said, I have just the person I can poach from another school for you.
Wow.
She is currently working in Market Raisin, but if you want to send your child here, and the other boy as well, both your children, he said, we'll have that person here by September. Unfortunately, the purchase went through, and we came and they went. So she was fantastic. Mrs. Treese, she still lives, she moved from Market Raisin into Lincoln, and she lives up near the cathedral. And I've bumped into her once or twice with Owen, and she's kind of gone, whoa, can't believe it's the same child that she used to look after.
Changed such an awful lot.
Changed so much. The school did wonders for them. So absolutely perfect decision school-wise, because I think Huw probably hated the school he was in the south, and we hated the school that Owen was in the south. So that we were able to get them both in the one school, and that for me it was a good school. And I'm not saying school is happy, because on balance I don't really like the idea of school.
Not fully on board with it.
I'm not really on board with it at all. I disapprove of a lot of their things. I disapprove of homework completely. I was never on the side of homework. And I think some of the subjects they teach aren't necessary, and I think some of the subjects they don't teach
should be
taught. So I don't really approve of the fact that your children have to be whipped away from you at 4.5 and sent to some institution, and that's where they stay until they're about 20 at least nowadays.
It's a long old time.
21, isn't it, when they normally come out of university?
Yeah.
What? You've robbed them of everything. I don't agree with it. But if they have to go, they might as well go to Saxelby School in those days, which was a great school. Yeah. And then I think Huw possibly got the best of Christ's Hospital School, and it started to filter off a bit by the time Owen was still there, although he had fantastic Senko. She was wonderful. But moving to Aberfoyle, when the kids were at school, Trev and I did so many things there on that plot together, and people go, what's the fun in fencing? Look, we put up fences in complete harmony. The wonderful thing about it was, that we didn't have to keep saying to one another, can you get another bunch of staples ready, or where did I put that hammer? It was, he would look round, I presented what he needed, I held up, he did this. We worked together in total harmony and peace and enjoyment in the fresh air, doing all the jobs that needed to be done at that place.
Were you like that? Were you like that together in most of your life?
I suppose.
Were there things where you didn't get on together quite as well sometimes, or not as much?
I think earlier in this scenario, before we moved away from Bookham, the trouble is that he, as I was saying earlier, he had to work and then I had to work, so we couldn't do work together.
No.
I had the weekends. He mostly had the weekends, and then we did things with the boys. So actually having our own space together, it was quite unique in our sort of lifetime together. So we enjoyed that. We had a wonderful time. It was lovely when he had to tow the caravan across the field that we'd bought, the van, as you know it. We had to take the fence down and take it into the farmer's field. We had to ask their permission. They didn't mind. And we had to get it at the right time of year, of course, so we didn't damage crops, and tow that across and joggle that in there. I've got some photos of him, moving it with the Land Rover, and
Yeah.
It was just fun. It was lovely.
Had fun
it was
together.
Fun, and having the goats was fun initially. It got a lot more difficult after Trev died because the boys didn't want anything to do with the goats.
Yeah.
So it was under duress that they had to come and help me if I had to trim their hooves and things like that.
Hard to manage on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, they didn't really want to do things like helping clean out the chicken sheds. I don't blame them. It was horrible. But things I would have shared with Trev, after Trev had gone, it's not possible really. It's not possible for one person, I don't think, unless you don't have children. Maybe one person who doesn't have children could devote their whole time to a small holding, and I'm sure people do. But with children, particularly those who had additional needs, it's not possible to run a small holding of any kind. And of course, while Trev was alive, we were talking about employment earlier, I'd tried running my own business with pet boarding.
Yeah.
And I did have a few pets there on and off, didn't make it pay, so I gave that up.
Yeah.
But there was no need or want anymore for Aberfoyle after Trev had gone, because
that was your thing together.
it was our together thing.
Yeah.
It was our big thing.
Was that your biggest? Would you say that was like your fondest memory of Trevor? Was those things, doing that thing together at Aberfoyle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was when we spent the most time together. We just laughed and had fun, and it was smashing.
How did you meet Trevor?
I met Trev as a result of a blind date.
Really? Wow. Who got you? Who lined you up for that then?
Well,
Or did you do it yourself?
he had a pair of married friends.
Yeah.
Who I met through, I can't remember which way round it was, but anyway, for a very short period of time I was seeing a fellow who was a friend of them.
Yeah.
So it could be that I met them, or it could have been that I met them because he used to be a mechanic and I had a car problem. I think they might have known other friends of mine who also lived in Guildford.
Yeah.
But anyway, the friends decided that I was a person on my own and Trev was a person on his own. So it'd be good to just put us together. And they just said to each of us, do you want to try this? And we went, yeah, all right. So
Why not?
It was a meal. It was in December 1993, I think.
Yeah.
And it was in a place in Guildford, and it was curry. And I'd not eaten a lot of curry, and I asked Trev to pick for me, and so he chose what I was going to eat, and we just sort of got along.
He liked curries.
Yeah. And I was staying at another friend's house in Guildford that night, and he walked me back home, and it just went from there really.
Wow.
And so he took me out on a couple of dates. He took me out. He was very generous, and he couldn't understand why I didn't want to be over-endowed with gifts at the time. I mean, A, I didn't need anything, and B, I didn't want anything.
Yeah.
But he felt that you take somebody out, you buy them gifts. And so we would just go shopping in a shopping centre and say, let me buy you this, or let me buy you that. And I'd go, no, I don't need it, I don't want it. But I think, his former girlfriend would have said, yes,
Yeah.
So
He didn't know that you wouldn't be up for it. He thought this is what women want. They want to be showered with gifts.
But anyway, we started going to a couple of Land Rover trials. The only funny thing was, wherever Trev took me, he never thought about eating, and I used to be starving. So I quickly realised I'd have to say, we're stopping somewhere for lunch. And he'd go, oh, I'm so sorry, has it gone past lunchtime? And
that's just like you.
Yeah, and then we'd stop for lunch. But we started going to Land Rover trials, and whoops.
It's all right.
It's an alarm going off.
Yeah.
And I got a liking for that idea, because I used to ride a motorbike, and
did you?
it was an off-road bike, and not for a long period of time, but I'd got used to riding this off-road.
Yeah.
But I could go on the road with it as well, either or. Yeah. And Trev quickly persuaded me to give it up, because he said, which I totally believe, even in those days, and obviously we're going back a number of years,
Yeah.
The roads are very hazardous for people on motorbikes.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you've got no protection around you, have you?
No, you're just open to anything that's coming along.
And he said that he used to ride a motorbike, because he used to be a motorcycle courier once. And he said, too dangerous. He said, how about now I've found you, I don't want to lose you. He said, just get into Land Rovers instead.
Yeah.
So I was quite taken with the idea of the off-road Land Rovers and etc. And had a few trials, and I won my novice cup and things like that. But then we obviously got married in between times.
Yeah.
And then we had the boys, and Owen was terrified of Land Rovers.
Really?
So it meant that Trev had to go to Land Rover trials without me.
Yeah.
And then when Huw got a little bit older, he could go with, he would take Huw, but I'd still stay at home with Owen.
Yeah.
So it kind of dropped off.
Yeah.
But the desire has gone a little bit, but I still love Land Rovers. If I didn't love them, I wouldn't still have them.
Yeah.
And every time the Peak and Dukeries or the Lincolnshire Land Rover Club posts an event and I see it, and it says interested, and I often tick yes, interested.
Yeah.
Might be going. It says I might be going.
Yeah.
Oh, shucks, I don't go.
Never make it. Yeah.
But I want to.
Yeah.
The desire is there to just be a part of it. It'd be very good for exercise as well, because there's a lot of walking.
It'd make you feel good if you went, wouldn't it? I'm sure.
It would make me feel good. It would make me feel good to turn up in one of the Land Rovers and be recognised. We did turn up at another kind of event once, and we discovered half of Peak and Dukeries Land Rover Club were there, and they welcomed us in, which was rather nice. But we've been to very few. The ones that Huw went and smashed, he was absolutely brilliant. He's a really good driver.
Yeah.
And he was really good at trialling, really good. Took to it like a duck to water. I think his heart went out of it a bit after Trevor died.
Yeah.
He went back to fight for his, to retain the trophy the next year. And our very good friend Stephen went round with him. But for Huw, he could have been an angel, and it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
Because you have a navigator, you see, when you're driving.
Yeah.
And so Stephen did the navigating. But you have to have a navigator if you're young. If you're under 16 or
Do you have to have
under
any
18,
kind?
I
Do
think.
you have to have any kind of like? I mean, I don't know. It must be different nowadays, but like, do you have to have any kind of qualification or certificate or anything to be able to do it?
No.
They just let you do it.
No, exactly, because Huw didn't have a driving licence.
Yeah.
But you can start doing them. What they do is they do these things called the children's trials.
Yeah.
People adapt lawnmowers into like little mini 4x4s for off-road.
Yeah.
And then they start doing those trials when they're quite young.
Yeah, a bit safer.
Yeah, they may have changed the age, I don't know, but it used to be 14 when they could actually participate in the Tyro, which I don't know if Huw said it on his, but it's called Try Your Rover Out.
He did mention that,
We always used to call them Turn Your Rover Over.
yeah, flip it over.
That's the first one. Or even gymkhanas as well. Gymkhanas, when we go in and out of fences and do things like dropping balls in a bucket and taking flags off the top of a post and that kind of thing. So you have to have
fun.
Someone does the driving. They can do it on their own, but they often have a navigator and participate in that. Trailer reversing is another one. My husband was fantastic at trailer reversing.
Looking back and
and
getting things in the right place.
He was perfect at that.
But it's an art, isn't it? It's quite a skill.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But then again, he was a lorry driver.
Yeah.
But he used to do all those trials. But I think it's 14 anyway. We do Turn Your Rover over. Then people progress to RTVs and CCVs, and some people go on to comp safaris, which is a time trial. Don't know if he said that.
Yeah, he mentioned it.
A CCV
briefly.
is a cross-country vehicle, which means you put them against harder terrain. So there are like very steep drops and sharp inclines, and where the vehicle might turn over because you have to get the slope just right or at the right speed.
Risky.
Lumpy, bumpy, swamps through the water, mud, whole works.
Sounds crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. You've got to go to one.
I would love to do it with you, actually. I think it would be a good team.
Yeah, it would be great. It'd be great fun. So I'd love him to be able to get back into it.
Yeah.
Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, definitely.
Why do I keep 2 Land Rovers otherwise? Me about Lincolnshire, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I think it's I feel of it's my spiritual home.
Really?
It's just a place that I love, and I have no regrets about moving up here from the south. Nothing would make me move back there.
Huw said that you felt the people were nicer.
They are.
Yeah.
Totally, absolutely, 100% nicer.
Why do you think that is?
I don't think they're so grabbing. They're not after everything, and they don't think they're a cut above the rest.
Yeah.
And I met that snooty kind. I met that kind in the south all the time.
More common.
They had to think about what coat they were wearing to school to take their kids, because it had to look the best. Yeah. And I'm going, do what?
It doesn't matter, does it?
Nah, it doesn't matter, because when you die, that's it. You leave all your worldly goods behind. You don't take them with you. It doesn't matter. You wear what's comfortable.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
You end with what you started with, don't you?
Yeah, but they are nice folks up here. Here, Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, all nicer. Yeah. And but this particular area, I love it. I can walk for miles if it's flat. I'm not much good with hills. I had to walk up a steep hill the other day, and it was hard going.
Yeah.
But I love the area. I love fields, and for me that's God and human beings working together in conjunction. And you see things growing in a field, because God can do all that other stuff, but we've got involved in it as well. So we're part and parcel of it. And so I just love to see growing fields. I still love to see whatever was going to be planted in the field next to Aberfoyle when we were there. So. There are views that I love to see. I love to be coming down from Branston and looking up at the cathedral. I love to be going over the bridge and looking across at that little old bridge with the Tudor buildings. I love the Brayford Pool. I love the modern art one end and the Tudor end, the other end, and then the other Tudor building right down the other end against.
Got some amazing history, hasn't it?
Fantastic history. I'd been to the castle before. I'd been with the boys. I hadn't really been able to fully appreciate it until I went with my friend recently, and we went on a castle tour, and then we went around the walls and really took in much more of the history and figured out that it was actually pivotal, because we could all be speaking French now if a particular battle had gone a different way.
Exactly, yeah.
The same could be said of German, of course.
Yeah.
We could have been.
Well, we're very intertwined with all the people around, all the European countries around us, and the Vikings as well. We are based on a mixture of different cultures.
Which is why I really would love. I'd love a flag that said that I could wave at some idiot that says, "More British." What do you think British is, mate?
What do you think you actually are?
Who are you?
Yeah.
Go and get tested for your DNA and find out that you're actually a black African. I'd love it. Because I'm so opposed to ism of any kind. And unfortunately for people in my generation, we sometimes have some unconscious isms. So sometimes we're not aware of it until it's happened. And I've spent most of my thinking years trying to weed out my unconscious isms. Because I hate being against anybody. And having been in a minority group all the time, I was with the Travellers, who, strangely enough, they can't call it racism when it's against the Travellers. But It's very in my family we know lots of people in different groups.
Yeah.
For want of
Different walks of life.
Absolutely, and you have to accept everybody for who they are at any given time.
Yeah.
As well, so a person might be a person then, and now there's somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take that. That's fine.
I like this. I like that about this. Talking to people who are like, I wouldn't talk to, like it gives me a reason to talk to them. Just saying to someone, "Can I come and have a chat with you?" is kind of would be a bit odd. But I've had some good conversations. I met a bloke on Saturday who's worked for a lot of big businesses. And he's from Hull. He's been director of many big businesses. He's made a lot of money. He's got a lovely house. And I wouldn't get to normally find out about him. I met him at work, and I just said, "Do you want to come over and can I go and come and meet you and have a chat with you and do this?" And he said, "Yeah."
Great.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed myself, and I felt so elated afterwards that I'd spoken to him.
Yeah.
But like you say, like different walks of life, and spending time with those people and learning what makes them tick and why they do the things they do.
Absolutely, and like yourself as well, I found that older people have much more to tell. They have a lot of history, so when I was, for example, when I volunteered for a short time at the Blind Club, it's interesting to get to talk to some older members of society there who've got a lot of story to tell. Yeah. And I used to have a friend who was blind as well and passed away now, but she had such an interesting history to tell. Sadly, she used to feel that because she couldn't see, she couldn't remind herself of anything by like looking at pictures, or she couldn't read a book, she couldn't watch the TV, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But she used to dream, and she often used to dream about those past things. Yeah. And I said, nobody can take it away. Nobody can take away your dreams. Nobody can take away your thoughts either. You keep them, you have them. What you do forget, probably you're not bothered about, but if all the while you want to keep those things, you can keep them.
So she became blind later in her life?
Yeah, she did, sadly. But yeah, she was lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've met a lot of older people and found them full of interest and stories. So I totally agree with you with that. Yeah,
it's good. It's good. It's interesting to take that knowledge on, isn't it, and try and learn something from it. You can't take it all in, can you? Because it's something that you sort of gather throughout your life, I suppose. But
yeah, it is.
It's certainly interesting.
Yeah, it is.
How long have you been religious for?
Well, long time, I think, because my mum was brought up a Methodist in the Methodist church. I know that my dad did go to a church at some point, but essentially he clearly changed his mind at some stage and became a raging atheist.
Really?
So it was pretty difficult for my mum.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, she tried her best to bring us up in the Methodists. And for people who don't know what Methodists are, it's just a breakaway group from the C of E many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
But long established. They're not like raving nutters or anything. They just expect to go to church and worship and sing and pray and all those normal things. Anyway, we went to the Methodists. We went to Sunday school. We went to a couple of the after-school clubs when I was young.
Yeah.
But I think at some stage, a lot of young people, kids, younger teenagers, etc., do start to question and think they shouldn't do something just because that's what they've been guided to do.
Yeah.
And so I just turned my back on it at some stage.
Yeah.
And obviously, I was expected to do an awful lot of things when I was young, and I wasn't interested in any of them. My mum hoped I would be a nurse. My dad hoped I would be a teacher because he was a teacher. There was nursing in my mum's family. There was teaching in both sides.
Yeah.
And I thought, nah. I wanted to be a vet, and there is a purpose to my tale. I wanted to be a vet, and I didn't have the maths skills required.
Yeah.
So I thought, if I can't be what I want, there's actually nothing I want to do. I don't care for school. In fact, I absolutely hate it.
Really?
So I'm going to quit.
Mm.
And I left school as soon as I could,
Mm-hmm.
which was 15 in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I went off out to work. My dad found me a job working at the chicken factory.
Yeah.
And then I went to the NAFI supermarket, and then I went to a camera shop and worked there before I married my husband. But now I have digressed. I've forgotten what the point was that I was going to make. Where were we?
Well, I asked you how long you've been religious for.
Yes, absolutely. So during that
you
period of
refound
time that I was with my first husband, of course the church was always in the background, because Mum was an incredibly faithful person.
Yeah.
She never stopped believing, even though she was quite telepathic and etc. There used to be a lot of telepathy in our family. Levi correctly predicted that Julian had nearly drowned when he was in school, and just walked out of the school and came home to find out it was quite true. He'd nearly drowned, and
Wow.
we had to pluck him out of the river. So lots of telepathy went on, but nevertheless, even though Mum was telepathic, she was actually a very, very faithful woman, and so it was always there in the background. And she fully believed that God was in control of things, and that so therefore, what happened. It was all part of the experiences of life, etc. So the sort of seeping knowledge was always there.
Yeah.
But I think after I left Tookie and I went back home, and we started. I started a different phase of life, working, etc. I decided to try and renew my relationship with the church then.
Is that what you call a born again Christian, or is it not really?
Not for me at the time. It wasn't. It was. I think I might like to go to church more than anything else.
Yeah. Just want to go.
But there's a lot to be said for beginning to do so and then asking questions. And Levi had become a Christian then, and I would question Levi, and much the same as my dad had questioned me, because when my dad lay dying, just before he came home to die, he was in the hospital, and he had... Just getting ahead of myself. Go back to Levi. I would ask Levi questions.
Yeah.
And
what kind of questions?
How do we know that God is there, and what is the purpose of the bad things that happen, and why can't we control that, and why doesn't God control that, and all sorts of different things which are biblical.
Yeah.
And in fact, he answered them with quite good understanding and knowledge, except he was a fairly new Christian himself. But he also understood that if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, look, I don't actually know the answer, but it's about faith, the thing of knowing something without being able to see it.
Yeah.
And
believing.
So I went to a Billy Graham concert in London, Wembley, I think it was Wembley. It could have been Crystal Palace, to be honest.
Yeah.
One or the other. And it was absolutely amazing. Now, I do understand about crowd hysteria, and there could be crowd hysteria and everything, but sometimes Billy Graham was saying hugely important things, and as he was doing so, the lightning was striking from the sky, and thunder was clapping overhead, and the rain came down in stair rods, and everybody sang louder and louder and louder. It was an incredible thing. But
experience.
I knew then that I would kind of sign up to Christianity.
Yeah.
But I had a strange experience that I'm sure people doubt, when I was very ill in bed with bronchitis.
Yeah.
With thinking, I felt so bad that I thought that I would die. And people say it must have been a dream, but for me it was as real as you sitting here. That I saw the devil coming towards me. It appeared to me the devil was coming towards me at the end of the bed. But Jesus, or a representation of what Jesus means, came to me from the side.
Yeah.
And the devil faded away. And then I felt I came back to life. I felt I was able to get well and recover. So I'd had that experience. So my faith was born, and then I accepted it.
Yeah.
And then the two really combined, because as soon as we study and we begin to understand, it's phenomenal. And then you go, whoa, I never realised that. Whoa, goodness me, good gracious.
So do you believe that, like, that those experiences happen within yourself, or do you think that happens somewhere else? Like, it happens to us, or that it happens within us? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you think it's...
I think it's a within us thing.
Within us, yeah.
Because, well, the thing is, first of all, let me say, I don't disbelieve anything. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
Anything and everything in this life is hugely possible. Because if it's not, then I would be minimising my God.
Yeah.
Because the God I believe in is the creator of the whole universe.
Yeah. Everything that we experience.
Everything that is exists through God.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us that Jesus was with God in the very beginning. And it tells us this in John, at the beginning of John. That right at the beginning, when God created the world, Jesus was part of him. And it goes on to explain to us the Holy Trinity. Yeah. And some people try and explain this in quite simplistic ways, like it's, water, ice and vapour. Three things which are all part of one element.
In different forms. Yeah.
Okay? But we're told that the Spirit is to come to be with us and be within us, you see.
Yeah.
So in fact everything that we experience must be as a result of the Spirit being with us.
Yeah.
Because Jesus has told us that he has come to save everybody. He's come to save everybody.
Yeah.
So certainly since New Testament times, we can believe that the possibility is within everybody to know Christ and know God in this life. The possibility is there. But make no mistake, I believe that it also applies to at the time you are dying as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe even after you've died.
Yeah.
How do I know? Whether you can
can't say for certain, can you?
No, you can possibly die an atheist, and then Jesus says, "Here I am. What do you think now?"
Yeah.
And then you go, "Oh, okay, good."
I think I'm a classic agnostic, really. I just don't feel. I think I was listening to something today. I can't remember exactly what they said, but they were saying basically that how can you be sure of anything that's around you, and how can you say anything is definite? That is what it is, and you can't really, because it's all built upon your own perception, isn't it? And
yes, it is. I understand all the stuff about perception, but if we accept that, who wouldn't accept that there must be a purpose, there must be a reason, that there must be something behind? Because when we look at these clever books about the universe and etc., your mind nor mine can truly comprehend the fact that it's eternal.
Yeah.
That it goes on forever.
No, you can't. You think you can, but you can't actually comprehend that.
We actually can't really.
No, even just large amounts, you can't comprehend.
So for me, the fact that vast expanse of foreverness
Yeah.
could be responsible for this planet happening by accident, and the life that we know to have happened by accident, and potentially the life that is also existing on other planets in other solar systems in other parts of the universe.
Yeah.
No.
You don't believe that?
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that the higher power, and I don't care what you call it, and I don't care if you call it him.
Yeah.
It's him, her, whatever.
Do you see it as a person? Do you see it as an entity? Or
It's, much bigger than a person, but we were created in their image.
Yeah.
So it must have person-like characteristics,
Yeah.
right? But obviously be more than we can possibly like the universe,
Perceive.
more than we can comprehend.
Yeah.
So that's why I accept that anything is possible, because otherwise I'm minimising what God can do.
Yeah.
And it's a marvellous thing. Thing. But
It's hard to. It's so hard to explain it and to come to a conclusion on.
But it's also a lovely thing, and sometimes, as Fiona was saying the other day, my sister was saying the other day, it can be a nice cop out, because it's when the going gets tough, we can say God is in control.
Yeah, I don't have to worry because I've got it sorted.
I do what I can do, and what I can't do, I don't worry about, because God has a plan. God has it all in control.
I think that even if you were to think about, the fact that maybe we are in control of our own lives and free will and everything, when you actually think about the amount that you are in control of, in quote marks, it's very little.
Yeah, it is. It is very little.
It's nothing compared to the scale of the universe.
And especially when we sit here, and there's no doubt that everything in this planet consists of the same atoms.
Yeah. The same few
molecules and things have made that TV set and you.
Yeah.
So, whoa. That's just mind-blowing, isn't
crazy.
It? It's absolutely crazy. There might be ever so slightly less here now than there was, because we've sent things into space which have not come back.
Yeah.
But apart from that,
basically the same.
every drop of water that falls, has been drunk once.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful thing.
Do you ever think it's a bit of a wacky one, but do you ever think about other civilizations and things? Do you ever think about that?
Oh, you mean from... Yeah, of course I do. I saw
in
an
other
alien.
planets and things.
I saw an alien.
Did you? Okay, go on. Where did you see the alien?
Years and years ago, when I was with my first husband, we used to take turns to go round to my brother-in-law's and sister-in-law's house with their little boy, Mark, who's slightly older than Julian. And they would sometimes come to us, and where we went round to see them, which is the North Camp, we stayed for the night. Funnily enough, Mark used to see a ghost in that house and talk to somebody at the top of the stairs. Have I told you this story before?
No.
And as we left there one night, I saw what I can only describe as an alien in the lane where we had to drive along. Tookie was drunk, but he was driving anyway, because he used to be very obnoxious in that way and decided to do his own thing. I was not.
Yeah.
And so I was stone cold sober, and sat here and saw what I would call a very typical alien with the sort of large skull.
Yeah.
Because they always depicted as having a large skull. That's what this one had.
Yeah, like finning down towards the neck.
They didn't have a proper nose, just the slits in the face.
Yeah.
Very steely eyes, no facial hair whatsoever.
Yeah.
And appeared to be clothed, but I would call it like in an all-over one suit.
Yeah.
With no obvious fastenings. And he stared at my eyes, like locked onto my eyes in the windscreen. And as we went further along and passed him by, my eyesight never left him and he never left mine.
How far away?
Pretty close,
Yeah.
like close. I mean, how he stood there, I don't know, because he must have been like inside the hedge almost.
You just transfixed.
Absolutely transfixed.
And how long do you think it lasted for? Just 10, 15 seconds? Or?
Yes, it can't have been many seconds, can it? But it seemed like an eternity. And I was saying to Tucker, trying to bat him,
Not bothered?
no,
Well, he was out of it.
drunk completely.
Yeah.
Never forgotten it.
That's scary. Did it scare you, or did you think, wow?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Scary, and I went, whoa, this is actually an alien.
Yeah.
I never doubted it. Not
Really?
at the moment.
Wow.
I didn't think it was anything else.
My mum said she thought she saw an alien because she said she was flying to Cuba with her boyfriend at the time, and she was looking out into the sky. And I've heard pilots talk about this and stuff, and she saw what she thought was a plane, but it was very black, and it was kind of little. It was almost like a dot, I think she said. She said it was travelling one way, and she was watching it like, I wonder what that is, just another plane. And then it suddenly changed direction.
Yeah.
And then did it again, and she said it lasted for about 2 minutes or something.
Yeah, I love those.
And eventually it sort of just went off and disappeared really fast. And I said to her, like, I was trying to pick holes in it, like, why, this and that. And I said, why didn't you say to Steve, who she was with, like, why didn't you say anything to him? And she said, I was gobsmacked.
Yeah.
I couldn't even. She said I literally had my mouth open and I couldn't believe it.
I believe there's too much evidence now.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as long ago as when my parents were married in 1956, they were on the Thames, I think. But I don't know which part of the Thames, but I don't think it was in London. It might have been Henley or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And not only they, but many people. I think it might have been the night of my parents, or one of the nights of my parents' honeymoon, anyway.
Yeah.
They saw a spaceship that was recorded by many people, a typical flying saucer.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen well, I have and I haven't. I saw something come down that I would swear black was white was not normal.
Yeah.
And it disappeared down behind a hedge, but whether it was, it was what I would call semicircular, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe cigar-shaped,
Yeah.
but landing lights. But my brother saw some other common as well.
Yeah.
So it's too much evidence, and also the things that we uncover with archaeology, which, how could those cavemen have drawn that unless they'd seen it? There's too many little coincidences like that.
Yeah.
Also, with the benefit of seeing things from the sky, things which point in set directions, etc. Nobody could possibly have done that in those days unless they had some kind of guidance. Things that have been built in certain ways which depict stuff to do with the universe and what have you. They couldn't even see the blooming universe in those days.
Wow, yeah.
They could see a few of the stars that we can see, and probably more than we can see, but they couldn't see the vast distances that modern telescopes and etc. can. Yet some of these things are depicted in the ground or in buildings.
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen then? Yeah.
I
totally believe in it, but our God's a big God. He's probably got other worlds like that.
He's got fingers in pies.
Yeah, I think he's
That's
got
what
a lot.
he's doing. Yeah. Does Huw or Owen, are they religious in any way?
Are they what?
Are they religious in any way?
I think Owen has started to fluctuate somewhat, because I think at some stage it's possible to realise that other religions do also have a certain amount of sense.
Yeah.
Some do.
Yeah.
Sadly, I don't go along with the Muslims a great deal, but they, strangely enough, their history is that they worship the same God, but then the two factions broke up, and one went on to be Christians, and Muslims basically went on to be something else. So, but the many scriptures and etc. from various religions can say very similar things.
Yeah.
So my feeling probably, which is probably a little bit on the cocky side, I'm not saying that the Christians are completely right about anything. What I'm saying is I think possibly we're all looking for the same God, which is the God that
in all those attempts, it's all
God.
looking for the same thing.
Yeah, probably. But, you know, they may not have quite got the full picture. I mean, in the same way as the Jews. And the Jews, similarly, have followed the whole of the Bible up to the New Testament. It's just because they're Jewish, let's face it. They're the ancestry of Christianity.
Yeah.
But when it came to Christianity, they went, no, that wasn't right. But in fact, if you read back in various different things, all the predictions and etc. were that Jesus would come and all the different things would happen as they happened. So I think they just missed the point, sadly.
What do you think of, obviously, I think less and less people are religious nowadays, aren't they?
Pardon?
I say less and less people are religious nowadays. How do you think that they're missing something by not having some religion in their life?
I don't know that less and less people are religious. Less and less people may be Christians.
Yeah, but they still believe.
Some other religions are growing quite quickly.
Yeah.
But in some parts of the globe, Christianity is still growing.
Yeah.
But here, we don't necessarily see that.
No.
We do see it in some of the more. I mean, my church is an evangelical church, but we've suffered through COVID and the loss of a couple of vicars.
Yeah.
But hoping for an evangelical incumbent to come in.
Yeah.
But there are some of the evangelical groups which are really doing well and thriving. But I think people have lost the fervour for Christianity a bit in this country.
Yeah.
And there are lots of other options.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes they're unfortunately misled by things and let down by them as well.
Yeah.
But I expect the Christian church lets some people down.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's different, aren't they?
Follow through with things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Hugh's probably almost a complete atheist, I would have thought.
Huw.
Yeah.
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 Does that bother you at all, or do you just think it's his life? He can think of it.
I don't worry about it because Jesus came to save everybody.
Regardless of whether you believe or not, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at some point, it might not be in my lifetime, but I believe that Huw will come to know the Lord one way or the other.
Like yourself, it took a long time for you to come back round to it.
For me to come back round to it. He had the beginnings of it. We used to go to church as a family.
Yeah.
When we were younger. Trevor was brought up in the church. He kind of went, And the reason he did was because his mother became very seriously ill with Parkinson's not many years after Trevor was born, so he was quite a young boy. So for nearly the whole of the rest of her life, while Trev was alive with her, if you see what I mean,
yeah.
She was disabled. So he went, no, blast the church. That's your God. Made my mother be ill for all her life until she died. But in fact, that woman was, to all accounts, but I've heard from many, many people, I never met her, she was wonderful. Even though she had to struggle with speech and things, she still used to joke, she still used to laugh.
Yeah.
She appreciated life, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can go through, isn't it?
Maybe there was something to be learned there, maybe there was something. How wonderful that the man that she married was a person who used to cook when he was in the Navy. So in a time when men didn't necessarily do the household chores, he knew how to do all the household chores and all the cooking, and he was a very talented cook.
Yeah.
So he had those skills in place when she became poorly.
Yeah,
you know?
Sort of passed down.
So it kind of, it worked, didn't it? It worked. And, but it's, I can understand why people are concerned about it. I'm not concerned about it at all. I pray for them. I don't spend all my time doing it because otherwise there's lots of things to pray for anyway. There's loads and loads of things every single day.
Yeah.
But I pray for the boys. I pray for everybody I know.
Yeah.
But I trust and have faith. And that trust and faith, which is, as we said slightly earlier, is something that is very hugely difficult to put into words.
Yeah,
It's that knowledge within that something is real and that something is true.
Yeah.
So I have every trust. I know there are people who don't, and I recall I wouldn't call him a personal friend because I didn't know him very well.
Yeah.
But I recall a person who said, along the lines of, my mother went to hell, I'm fine with that. And I said, how can you say that? I said, are you bigger than God? No, you cannot know that.
Yeah.
You cannot know that. There's no way you can say. I would never, ever say it.
No.
I know there are form, as a matter of form, the churches say a slightly different wording for people who profess to be Christians who've died than for people who were not Christians who've died. But they wouldn't condemn a person. They wouldn't say, you definitely went to hell. Most people wouldn't.
Would you see it as it's not for any person to decide that, really? Or to
No, it's not
make judgment on it?
It's not for us to decide, for goodness sake, no.
Yeah.
No, we can't judge. And it's that old thing about walking so many miles in somebody else's shoes. Unless you've done it, you don't know. And you don't know what's in somebody's heart already. It doesn't matter what they say with their mouth.
Yeah.
What's in their heart, we can't see it.
No.
We can't interpret it. And because I think the spirit is within, now there's some people who might see it another way. They might say, well, when you say, oh yeah, it's Jesus, I'll have some of that, the spirit all of a sudden leaps in. No, I think the spirit is there to be understood or acknowledged.
Waiting.
Waiting.
Okay, that's
waiting
interesting.
for the chance.
Yeah.
So
it's not something I've studied or read about or been interested in.
no.
I don't know what I think of it, really. I haven't really got a point of view on it. I'm just interested. It's interesting to hear your point of view on it. What's the meaning of life to you, Jane?
Yeah, the meaning of life. I think the meaning of life is to discover God.
Yeah.
But along the way, it's to be kind to people, think good things, do good things, be as good a person as you can. And all those traits which we would like to think. But we all know, I know, that within me there are bad things.
Yeah.
I can be bad.
Inherently.
There's I can never be perfect, nobody can. But to strive to do the right thing and enable other people to be the person that they can be as well, the best that they can be for themselves. It's possible within us to do it.
Yeah.
And
I'd agree with that.
yeah,
I would agree with
it's
that.
really very simple, but not everybody gets it because it's such a grab society. And
Yeah. I think we've really lost our way with that a bit.
Yeah.
I think people are realising though.
They are starting to realise. But unfortunately, COVID had two sides. It gave us the chance to get to know our family more closely again and spend that time with them. But it also made us think more inwardly and want to be exclusive and think, never mind the others, I just want to protect my bubble. So it had two sides.
I think that's the problem. I think the sense of community, regardless of COVID, I think the sense of community has been lost really in the sort of current climate, like the way the world is. You don't need to go anywhere to get anything that you need now. You don't need to go down the road and meet the baker to get some bread or.
No, it's true.
It's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. really, I think.
That is absolutely. But you know what people have to do for their sanity really is to go to anything where it's a leveller, where your status and other stuff doesn't apply. Now, for example, because I've been losing weight on a weight loss program,
Okay.
and I report to say I'm doing what I consider to be quite well.
Yeah.
But in that group, when we go, the common denominator is we're all in there to try and lose weight.
Yeah.
You know, so that is the leveller.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what you're all there for.
It doesn't matter if you turned up in a Range Rover or you cycled or walked. It matters that you're all on the same page. Now, theoretically, some church groups are like that. So it's possible sometimes to get it within the framework of the church.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. But sometimes, yeah.
You think it just breaks down barriers between people? That kind of thing where you're all on the same page, like you say.
Yeah.
You see them for who they are.
Yeah. So
I suppose you would say you'd see their soul.
Yes, you do.
Almost, because it's...
But it could be anything. It doesn't have to be... it could be the Land Rover Club.
Yeah.
All right, we can see that some people can afford to spend more money on their vehicle, but at the end of the day...
You're all doing the same thing.
You're all going to try and get around that course without clipping the canes.
Yeah.
So you're all the same. It's have you got the skill? Can you sit behind the wheel and do that thing? So it's good, I think. Clubs are good for that. It doesn't matter what club it is.
Yeah. Join one.
Join one and be part of the great levelling. And I think there should be a lot more... I mean, obviously I'm a socialist, but there were times when I verged on the communist because I can see that there's good and bad, obviously, but I can see that there should never be the ability for somebody to be as wealthy as some of these top people are, while there are people starving. It should not be allowed in this world today.
Yeah.
It should just not happen.
And it's not good.
When there's millions and I'm not saying there shouldn't be space travel, but not for individuals who've got so much money they don't know what to do with it, that they think that the thing they can do is send rockets up and probably charge a few people to have a little bit of orbit around Earth just above the atmosphere. No! No, it should not happen in today's world. The money should be shared around the world.
I agree with that.
The whole of it.
It's a tricky subject, though, isn't it?
It's a dreadfully tricky subject, and this
I
country is no better than anywhere else. We're not setting out. We can't say, "Oh, Britons are different about it." No, we're not blooming different about it. This country, any country in the world, we've all got sleaze, and we have, awful things go on behind closed doors. In the pursuit of superiority, technology, knowledge about other people and what they're doing, money.
I think what you just said about, I wouldn't know, I couldn't pretend to try and answer that or try and speak to that problem you just mentioned with wealth and distribution of it, but I think what you just said about levelling with other people and doing things within a group that shows that you're all the same, I think that's one of the best ways for people to... I think people who've got a lot of money have spent their whole lives being obsessed by money, whether they think they have or not. And I think maybe they don't spend enough time doing things like that.
Maybe they don't. I expect there are some who do.
Then I think I don't know enough about him, but I think Bill Gates has done his fair share for the amount of money he's got.
Yeah, I think it was also Bill Gates who wrote down some very good, ways of thinking. But
I do like him.
There's other people who behind closed doors do good, like George Michael was one, for example, who never boasted and talked about the good that he did, but of course after he died, we then learned, that if he would read or hear of somebody in need for a particular thing, he would just do it silently, quietly, which is a fantastic thing to do. But I think, unfortunately for George Michael in particular, I think he was quite an isolated being and had limited, really trustworthy and trusted
people around him.
Yeah. And could George Michael have gone out and just sat down and slummed it in a pub with a load of other people? No, because people have been all over him like a rash.
Yeah.
So for the people who are known personalities, I think it's very, very difficult. To engage.
If you're a really powerful person with a lot of money and you've got responsibilities and you've got this thing built up around you, it's hard to just say no to that, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it is.
Because that's the life you built for yourself, and for people to divert off track and realise things, most of the time, I think they have to be forced into that position, don't they? They don't do it under their own will or their own decision,
I'm sure there must be some that we don't know of.
Yeah, there will be.
I'm sure some people who can be, if they're not a known face on the TV, they can be extremely wealthy, and they probably do slip down to the local pub and just sit and hang out with other people. And then they slip back to their mansion,
I was quite surprised by Paul, who was talking about the other day in Hull, how he's seemingly got quite a lot of money and all, everything you could ever want if that was what you were interested in. But at the same time, so sort of positive about people and wants people to get on better and wants good things for people, not just for himself. He's not like, I want this and I want that. He said he was very materialistic for a long time, and then he realised he split up with his original wife, I believe, and met someone else, and she made him realise that he was materialistic, and didn't need all that stuff to enjoy himself. He said at one point, the amount of things I actually need to make me happy is just minimal.
I
don't need a lot.
I think we all have the little extras. We can look around this room and see that I have an awful lot of plants. Now, we've had this discussion before, and we know a lot of them are Huw's. But even without Huw's plants here, I keep plants. I like paintings. I had my chairs covered because that's the kind of cover I wanted on them. But they're all actually non-essential to the way. And plants are healthy, of course. They're good for us to have them in the house and in the bedroom and things. But they're not essential. TV is not essential. There's so many things that we have that are literally not essential in this life.
And you could survive without them.
That we
quite
could
easily.
Totally survive without them. I did consider going in a commune once.
Yeah,
I'm going back again quite a way, but I thought about it because I could see that everybody being equal and participating in the roles which kept the community going would be quite an idealistic way of life, really.
What stopped you from doing that, do you think? Too much.
Probably some bloke,
Well, I suppose it's quite hard to change your whole life and step into that, because you've got to.
It is.
You've got to change. You've got to let go of things that are already happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And because in between my two husbands, I had a long-term partner as well, who I loved immensely. But so there's always been something going on. So there's always been some hankering to be with somebody, and I suppose the truth is that it's very difficult to choose to leave family behind in those circumstances. And at some stage, I think I was thinking about it, of course, when Julian was still a boy, but when he grew up, the choice would have been leaving him behind as well. In fact, as it turned out, he left me and went back to his father. But there's all those sorts of things, but it was more than just a vague idea. It was quite an idea. But I mean, I couldn't be one of the sort of, even in this country there are religious communities which are a bit like the Amish, so they have quite different standards for men and women. And I'm much too emancipated woman to want to be.
It's like Mormons, things like that.
Yeah, there are. There's various. I mean, there's one. Where is it? I can't remember exactly where it is now, but where the women are subservient basically, and I I think that sometimes couples fall naturally into particular roles, which sometimes suit their gender.
Yeah.
But I'm not that person that could be in a subservient role.
Yeah.
But if it was all equal, and it didn't matter whether I was, driving the machinery or doing the sewing, if it was a bit of that, I wouldn't mind it really. So
Everyone's
it was
different,
more the
aren't they?
passing thought.
It suits.
Just didn't take it.
It's that kind of thing suits some people and others, doesn't it? So, yeah.
But I think as well, because I've had an awful lot of different jobs and worked with so many different types of people, it's meant that I've had that flavour of how to get along.
Yeah.
In different kinds with different people in different situations and societies.
It's important.
And different lines of work.
I think it's really important to do that.
Because I've enjoyed all of those. And I particularly enjoyed the farm work as well.
Helps you grow, I think, to do things that are outside of your comfort zone, basically.
It does.
I think it's really important.
I would have encouraged the boys, and I did in fact when Huw first finished whatever education he was originally doing and decided to go into the wider world. I said, go out and do either voluntary or seasonal work and go around doing different things like I did, because I got such a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Doing those years of the farm work in different stages of the farm work and different things.
Does it reprioritise you a little bit when you do something like that? Does it make you realise what does it make you realise, and what do you enjoy about that doing that?
What? It's about the earth, isn't it? It's about this, particularly farm work, because it's about the cycle of life. So the growing and reaping and harvesting and
sowing and replanting.
Exactly. That
cycle.
Sort of stuff is just, it's very, it's basic, it's earthy, it's hard work.
Yeah, it is.
And often smelly and wet and achy. But it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Very, very good. A lot you can get a big up.
Labour. Yeah. It is definitely. Yeah. You get a lot out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thanks for talking to me, Jane.
No, thank you.
Did you enjoy that?
I have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it as well.
Great opportunity to be able to talk to somebody at more length than we normally might.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of you don't get to learn that much about people in a day-to-day setting, do you? It can take a number of years to get to this point, couldn't it? I mean, this is maybe the kind of conversation you'd have with Huw or Owen,
and bits and pieces of the conversation we've had would be things that I've had on occasion with Huw and with Owen.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank
really
you
enjoyed
very
it.
Much. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Hi again. Big thanks to Jane for joining me on this episode. Her story is long and winding, and there's lots of things that have happened in her life that have been big ups and big downs. But yeah, I really enjoyed listening to her story, and I hope you guys did too. So thanks very much for coming on, Jane. If you want to get involved at all, or you'd like any suggestions or anything like that, just leave a comment below, or get to me on my Instagram page. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, and like and subscribe for more. Cheers.